From the sidelines to the paint and all the way back to the three-point line where I am certain to miss every single shot. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jason Burns.
It's a lot of sports references, and I'm Danny Nucci, and this is the What About podcast.
You know, we recently discussed on a previous episode, Danny, that your original dream was to become, an NBA player and go into basketball.
It's forever on audio. I can't deny it anymore, but yeah, no, it's true.
So what was it like sitting down with an NBA legend like Carlos Boozer?
Just like being a fan, it's always that experience of having a conversation and having a human interaction with someone that you're a fan of and that you looked up to and that I loved his game. I mean, this guy would be a first ballot Hall of Famer if he was literally 2 inches taller. You know what I mean? It's just like what he did at the power forward position was terrific. Not to get too far into the sport thing, but and by the way, resilience was the topic. I'm not sure if you know that. I just want to make sure that you're clear about that, Jay. It's resilience was the topic.
And he's a resilient dude, and we were resilient in putting this one together because what happened...
Bro, how appropriate.
Every
right?
technical issue that could happen did happen, and I just wanted to give readers a quick walkthrough that this was supposed to be a longer interview.
First of all, they're not readers, they're listeners.
What did I say, readers?
You said readers.
Maybe because I have to wear my reading
I keep
glasses.
calling them the audience, but they're not the audience. They're my friends listening.
The listeners, I just wanted to update them on where we were at because originally we couldn't get our studio to work. Carlos couldn't get in. And then we tried Zoom, and we couldn't get Zoom to work. So we went all the way back in time, and we recorded this episode.
We went on MySpace. We recorded on MySpace.
Yeah, Tom's with us. But no, we had to record on Skype. So the audio is not fantastic. Everybody be warned about that. We were all on one line, but we still did it. We were resilient. But what he's saying in this podcast is fucking amazing. And I just hope that people hear beyond the challenge
of listening to it
and listen to what Carlos has to say.
So without further ado, the not our best audio version of Carlos Boozer.
All right, Carlos, the book is about your life journey, but for me, and resilience, but for me, it was all about the relationship between you and your father. You know, my dad's been sick. And just seeing the way you guys had this amazing relationship, I'm curious how much of bringing this book into the world was a thank you to your dad's belief in you and sort of helping you on your journey.
Oh, my goodness, so much. I mean, shout out to my dad, the original Carlos Boozer. I'm a junior, so, he put the ball in my hand. Him and my mom, Renee Boozer, let me be a dreamer. I'm one of those kids that always was reaching for the stars and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And when I fell in love with basketball and I told my dad at 12 years old, hey, Dad, I want to go to the NBA and I don't want to play football anymore. I don't want to play baseball. I don't want to run track. I want to focus on basketball. He was like, let's go. It wasn't like oh, no, son, you got to go to the grocery store and get a job or get a paper route. He was like, okay, I'll figure out. I'll watch film. I'll study with you. I'll get all these books. I'll go to the library and look up different places to take you for camps because we didn't have a computer at home. My dad and my mom were completely committed to all 5 of their kids reaching their goals and going after them. And this was a huge thank you to my parents and my family and my coaches. And like the point I'm trying to make is I didn't get there alone. It took a village for me to make it from, all the way from Juneau, Alaska to the NBA and beyond. And I was very fortunate that at home I had 2 parents that let me dream.
Well, and the best part about that was just your stories about how your dad was out there with you in the Juneau wilderness playing basketball outside in the winters. I mean, what an amazing visual.
Literally, I would get home from school, knock out my homework as soon as I can, praying to God I did it right. So when my mom came home and she graded my homework that it was on point, and then as soon as I got the clearance from Mom, me and Pops would drive out to the road, Ock Bay. They had a covered area, so that whether it was raining, whether it was snowing, no matter what the weather was, it was an outdoor court that had a cover area. So we would use that. Listen, you can go to Juneau, Alaska right now and go to Ock Bay Elementary School, and that thing is still out there.
Oh,
and
nice.
That's where I honed in my skills at. My dad was with me every day. We would shovel snow off the court if there was snow there, and we get it in, man.
Covering doesn't make up for the weather, though. I mean, you learn to play in the cold. That's where it started, Carlos.
Yeah.
You started learning. I can play in the cold. I can play in anything.
Absolutely.
I was reading an article about you, and I read this part where you mentioned to the teacher that you wanted to be an NBA player, you want to play basketball, and they said, "That's nice. Go to Costco."
Yeah,
Right?
literally,
Yeah.
like my seventh grade teacher had an assignment. Everybody come back in, tell me what you want to do when you grow up. And so some people wanted to be an astronaut, some people wanted to be a photographer, some people even wanted to be a teacher. And I'm like, I want to go to the NBA, which is what I had just told my mom and dad like 2 months earlier. And she told me that I should lower my expectations and work at the local gas station or local supermarket. And I was like I told you guys earlier, I'm coming from a household my parents believed in me and believed in my dreams. And so I told my seventh grade teacher, like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go after my goal. And that's the reason why I wrote the book. I want my readers, whether you're the dreamer or you're the parent or the guardian of a dreamer, to encourage them to break down those barriers. I could have got discouraged right then and I would have ended up, being a lawyer or something, right? But no,
Yeah.
I was like, no, I want to go to the NBA. Kids out there that need to hear that story, and hopefully I can inspire one of them to keep going on their path.
Well, and that's unfortunately is probably a teacher who didn't live their own dreams and is taking it out on the kids that they're teaching, which is pretty awful to think about.
Oddly enough, though, I bought the gas station, and I invited her to the game in Seattle when I played the Supersonics. It was actually the game that I got the triple double. They came down. Her and her husband came down.
Nice.
They saw Duke alum, 13-year NBA star, all-star, Olympic gold medalist, and national championship for arguably the best coach to ever coach college basketball. It's pretty good. There, Carlos.
Thank you. It's crazy how a teacher can motivate you, huh?
Carlos, in order to write the book, you had to revisit some pretty tough memories, especially, with your friend Chris, as it relates to him. Did coming back to that experience and having to write about it help you sort of find some closure you didn't know you needed?
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy how childhood trauma presents itself in our adulthood, right? And I think for me, writing this book, this is something I'd always stay with me. Every time I would play the Wizards, I would think about Chris and the family. I stayed in touch with his mom pretty much throughout my NBA career. She came to a couple of games. But yeah, you have to deal with these things. Otherwise, they pop their head up in different ways. And writing the book about it, honoring Chris in this way, was really therapeutic for me, to be honest, man. It gave me a chance to revisit it, tap into that moment a little bit. Because it's almost like when you put pen to paper, it's almost like reliving these moments. Like I got a chance to, think about it and describe it and dig deep on how I felt about it and how it stayed with me and helped motivate me. On the flip side of that coin, just like going back and reliving the great moments of like getting drafted and how I thought about Chris, or winning a gold medal with Kobe and LeBron and thinking about Chris, and being in those moments again by writing this book. So very, very therapeutic. But I also wanted to get my readers and my fans out there to realize that, athletes and entertainers, and we're people just like you. Life can hit us hard just like anybody. And you can get up and keep going. That's what I had to do.
You still have feelings?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my. What a revelation. Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable how that happens, right? The thing I was interested, first of all, it's amazing that you not only had the idea to write the book, but then actually followed through, and it ended up being a HarperCollins book, which is no small publisher. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But if you could tell the listeners a little bit about a little background on what happened to Chris, so they just have a better idea of it, because how that prompted you to leave and your family to leave DC, I think is really kind of how you ended up in Juneau.
Yeah, we're playing ball in DC, Southeast side, like we always do, on any day that we can get out there, when the weather permits. And, he makes he had game. He can handle that ball. I mean, he was like Stephon Marbury with the basketball in his hand. He made a move on a gang member. And in the hood, people get excited when they see ankles break, right? And so he made a move, broke the kid's ankle, and he went back to his bike and got a gun and shot Chris in the stomach. And really, I'm holding him and he's dying in my arms. Ambulance came an hour or so later. He had already passed away. And, you never know the outcome of street violence or where it might lead to. So we got up and packed and moved to Juneau, Alaska, where my aunt lived at with her husband. And it ended up becoming a safe haven for us and a place that we flourished. My parents had 5 kids. After moving to Alaska, all of us graduated from college. All of us have had successful careers. And I contribute that to us making the move. I'm not saying that couldn't have happened in Washington, D.C., What I'm saying is it did happen after we moved to Juneau, Alaska.
And what's so amazing, Carlos, is that what I took from the story is that your parents chose not to discuss it. Your family chose not to discuss it. As a father now, were you able to sort of break that down and put yourself in their shoes and say, would I have been able to make that decision? Would I have made a different decision than them and addressed it if one of my kids went through that?
Yeah, it's difficult, man. I mean, everything my parents had known was in D.C. They met in D.C. They're born and raised and grew up in Washington, D.C. And then something like this happens and you're like, oh, like this is a sign from God that we got to change directions. You know, this is not a safe environment. Like there's people dying, there's kids dying. And it was Chris, who was our son's best friend. So, you know, and the way that he died, you know, to gang violence. So it was one of those things where at the time my parents probably made the best decision that they could have made. And if I was faced with that too, I'd pray on it very hard. I'd get guidance and counseling and I would do whatever was best for my family.
I love that part about what your family said, and you seem to carry this forward. If an opportunity presents itself, you take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I named my book Every Shot Counts, because every opportunity that you have could really change your life. And, you know, I'm fast forwarding, like me being recruited by all these different coaches and schools, and then here comes Coach K. And every question I had about leaving Juneau, Alaska, you know, this has been my safe haven, the place that me and my family have flourished in. I'm about to leave Alaska, and the decisions that we make when we close the chapter on high school, moving forward, is a huge decision. And so when I'm asking Coach all these questions, my parents are questioning him about, you know, life in Durham and life on campus and how will it be. He answered every question to make me feel comfortable coming there. And man, my life changed once I got to Duke.
And that was on your couch, right? Like he was in your living room. Yeah, amazing.
He took the hike all the way from Durham, North Carolina to Juneau, Alaska, to see me and talk to my family and get a sense of where I come from and my background and what shaped me for who the 17-year-old kid that was in front of him was. And we had so many similarities. He's from Chicago, very close-knit family as well. And it was a perfect fit for me.
What about resilience?
For the audience, you know, it's. I'm sure you obviously experientially know the answer to this question, but the definition of resilience was this: resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral, easy for me to say, flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. I mean, it's quite a definition, and I you know, it requires a survivor mentality. So without your, you know, permission, you were given a survivor mentality immediately, moving away and doing that. Can you talk a little bit about how you started to employ the same things that got you to the NBA once you entered the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I think life is our biggest lesson, right? And I think when you go through real things in life, it shapes you and who you are. And so when I got to the NBA, you know, I didn't get there. I wasn't the number one pick in the draft. Everything, like, it wasn't a red carpet that got rolled out for me. I had to earn my stripes, and I did that. And I was okay with that because I don't mind going through the hard work. And I always felt like the magic was in the work. Like, I always felt like if I put the time in and dedicate myself to my craft, the success will come from that. And so that's why, you know, I didn't get a chance to start right away. I had to earn my starting position. Everything I wanted, everything I achieved, I had to earn. It wasn't given to me. And I appreciate that looking back in a reflective state, like getting to the NBA, second round draft pick, and then being able to be a 2-time All-Star and a 2-time medalist in the Olympics and, you know, get a chance to play with some of the best players on the planet and be right there amongst them as peers. So for me, I think it's a sink or swim mentality, and I want to swim.
Is resilience something that you can teach, Carlos, like, for example, to your children, or is it something you just got to kind of learn through trial and error?
I think it can be. Like, I remember watching my mom and dad struggle, and they kept fighting. You know, my mom and dad having multiple jobs and trying to support the family. You know, I learned hard work right from home, right away. Like, we didn't live in no big house growing up. We lived in a 3-bedroom apartment, and there's 7 of us. You know what I mean? So I got a firsthand look at what resilience looks like. My mom and dad possibly losing a job and having to get another one, or trying to figure out how to make these leftovers stretch throughout the course of the week and stuff like that. So I have that example of real life, experiences in my own home. So it's easy to tell my kids, I know you're having a tough time, but you got this. Like, it's within you. Trust me. And you got to dig a little deeper. You find ways to dig deeper when you really want something badly.
Now, were you ever injured as a pro? I mean, I know you were injured
Oh, yeah.
the championship season, right?
Yeah.
The college championship season. You had a foot injury, right? But you came
Yeah.
back for the tourney and won and
Yeah.
got to participate in the game.
Yeah. No, I was rehabbing like a madman, and all day long. All I could think about was getting back, because we had a special group. We had lost the year before in the Sweet 16. All of us came back for our sophomore season, and we knew we had an opportunity to win a championship. We're crushing everybody on our path, and then here comes the hairline fracture. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But what I learned about our team is that we were deeper than we thought. Right? Casey Sanders steps in. Coach K revamps our offense. We're starting to play more like the young Phoenix Suns with Steve Nash and Dan Toney, and we go undefeated all the way to the Final Four. I come back. I'm busting my butt to get back in great shape. And then I had a great Final Four, man. We were down by 22 against Maryland, came back and won that game, had a huge game and participation in that. Go against a loaded Arizona team. I mean, Gilbert Arenas and Richard Jefferson and Luke Walton and Lauren Woods. These guys were they had like 6-7 pros on that team, and we beat that team by 10 to win the championship. So I just think that when you want something bad enough, if you put the work in to achieve it, it can happen.
One of the characteristics of resilience is having great problem-solving skills. Can you talk about how Coach K's advice of the next play, just think about the next play, helped in that?
Oh my goodness, you kidding me? Like, we're down 22 to a familiar foe in Maryland Terrapins, where we played 4 times that year, and as recently as the ACC championship game, right before the March Madness began, and they're kicking our butt, and we get in the huddle, and Coach K says, "Listen, we're going to win this game, just like when we beat them up there at their place in College Park. We're down by 10 with a minute to go, and we somehow." Jay Will takes over that game, gets us to overtime, and then Battier, carries us on to the win in overtime. And if you look at that roster, they had Steve Blake, Juan Dixon, Terrence Morris, Lonnie Baxter, Chris Wilcox. We had Chris Duhon, Jay Will, Dunleavy, Shane Battier, and myself. So we're kind of evenly matched if you think about it. But man, our X factor was Coach K. You know what I mean? Which he was most nights, and that in particular night, like, he had the belief in us that we could come back from that deficit. And to be, when you look back on the game, like, they dominated the first 10 minutes of that game, and then we dominated the next 30 minutes of that game to come back and win. And it all started with Coach K.
I love Danny mentioned the problem-solving skills. I loved when you were on the bench and you were told to pay attention to what the other guys are doing on the team and learn their positions, because it's going to make you a better player.
Yeah, that's the only way to grow as an individual. Like, it's cool that you know your spot, and that's great if that's all you want to be. But if you want to be, like, really cerebral and have a high IQ, what's your point guard supposed to do? What's your 2 guard supposed to do? What's your center? Like, if you know everybody's spots and your teammates knows everybody's spots, now you're clicking like the San Antonio Spurs. Like, when I got to the NBA and we're in the Western Conference Finals and we're playing against the Spurs and we're young, we're in Utah, me and Darren Williams and AK-47 and the rest of the crew, and we're playing against Timmy and Manu and Tony Parker and Coach Pop. When I go back and watch those films, they were like in sync. Offensively, they shared the ball. They didn't care who scored. Defensively, they're on a string. They make very few mistakes. And when you think about that, it's because they knew where each other was supposed to be at each moment. And I'm learning that at a college level with Coach K. So my point is, if you study the game and you put the work in, good things can happen.
Well, Carlos, we have an audience question every episode. Danny has that locked and loaded and ready to go, and I thought it was a really good one.
All right, so Patrick L. says, your son is the top recruit. What is it like watching your son grow, taking such a similar path as yourself, and how you've seen the recruiting process change from when you were recruited to Duke by Coach K?
Nah, it's so different, man. I mean, 20 years ago, shout out to Cameron, Caden, and Carmani. My oldest son, Carmani, is a baseball stud, getting recruited for pitching.
I saw that pitching, right? Yeah.
He's a pitcher. My twins, Cameron and Caden, are stud basketball juniors in high school, and they're recruited for basketball. But the landscape is so different. Now there's so many platforms. You have social media, and you can literally get discovered wherever you are in the world very easily, right? And the cool thing about that is if you play a good game or you have a good game against great competition, you go viral. I don't even know if viral was a word back when I was growing up,
Yeah,
but
it had a
it
different
is.
meaning back then,
It
right?
definitely had a different meaning. But the cool thing is my kids have a great maturity to them. They've been around the game their entire life. So like their uncles are Joakim Noah and D Rose and Darren Williams, and they've been in the locker rooms with us, and so they have a good poise to them. So they don't get too high on themselves and have a crazy ego when they see their name in the paper or their name on social media. They don't get too low when they have a bad game. They just stay confident and somehow even keel. And I think it's a tribute to mom and dad. Like I lived it. They're walking the path that I did when I like 25 years ago. And I was with their mom, through college and in the NBA. So she was around it as well. They got two good people to tap into to learn how to maneuver and how to navigate this landscape.
One of the another characteristic of resilience, and I'm curious about this because from hearing you tell it, you had a lot of support, first from your family, right? And then also your brothers and sisters. Well, there's seven of you, right? So you've got support from your brothers and sisters. You've got support from your parents. You get to college. Coach K, obviously a very supportive guy,
Yeah.
right? But a lot of these kids that maybe want to do the same thing as you, or even in other areas of life, don't have that same support. But the other characteristic is self-compassion, understanding what your limitations are, understanding what your assets are. Can you talk a little bit about that experience that you had? Because obviously it had to come up because there's a point where your support system is nowhere around and it's kind of between you, and you have to have that sort of self-compassion for the experience that you're going to. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, no, I was very lucky, very blessed to be born into a family where I did have the support, especially early on. Imagine me hearing from my seventh grade teacher that, lower my expectations and I go home and there's nobody to talk to, right? So I was very fortunate to have mom and dad and my older sister and my younger sisters and my brother to help me along that path. But to your point, there is a moment when you go through stuff and you got to look yourself in the mirror and be like, do I want this and how bad do I want this? Because your mom and dad's not going to get out there and shoot jump shots for you. Your mom and dad's not going to be out there picking you up when you get knocked down. You got to pick yourself up. So there is a point in time where you got to tap in to who's inside of you and that tiger or that lion or that hunger that comes out, and you'll discover who you really are.
Carlos, I know you have to jump. I do have to say, I did go back and read one section of the book twice, which was the prince changing your entire house into like princifying your entire house, which I have to imagine was the most surreal experience of your life, walking in there and seeing all that purple and the symbol and everything.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was furious, obviously. This is my house I just spent tons of money on, just decorated, and nothing that I put in the house was in the house. Everything was purple. Everything. Now, looking back on it now, it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
House out, turned everything to make it look like him. But at the time, I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, this is not a part of the contract, bro. But I'll tell you what, he was cool, man. Like when he did get a hold of me finally, he was terrific. When he moved out, everything was back to the way it was. It's like he spent enough money to buy a house in LA, but he just wanted to rent there and go back home to Minnesota. If you don't know the story, get my book.
Yes.
Every Shot Counts. It's available everywhere you can buy a book at. Online, you can also get the Audible version. You can hear all about the Prince story and how he once made my weight room into a disco ball nightclub.
That wasn't so bad, right? I mean, it was doable sound-wise, and what a cool. I just, I keep going back to his family and the way that he grew up, and I know we touched on it, but I was just, there's something to be said for parents. You know what I mean? Like this is like a parent shout out right here.
We talk about it. His dad played basketball with him in the Alaskan winters, outdoors.
But it's also just the spirit that and the focus and the the way that he dealt with all his children. It just happens to be that Carlos became an NBA player, and so a little bit more high profile. And I just love that he wrote this book, and I hope people go out and get it. And I really enjoyed talking to him. I look forward to talking to more NBA players, because then I can just kind of fanboy about it. Yeah, so remember it's like Game 7, and remember you were in the paint, and yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, a little Chris Farley action.
Yeah, is that what it is? Yeah, it's Chris Farley. It's exactly, yeah. Well, listen, thanks for listening. No, really, thank you for listening this time.
Music by Denny Nucci. Produced and edited by the same two people you heard hosting this show, because they have no friends.